They would all like a socialist revolution in this country. Would all like to live in a socialist society. Is that true?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, here.
But there's a hitch. There are about 300 million people in this country, and they aren't ready for a socialist revolution. They're ready for change. You know, they want to fight, they want better health care. The unemployed want a job. Young people want to go to school without burdensome higher tuition rates. That sort of thing. They want those sort of changes, but they aren't ready yet for a socialist revolution. You know, their vision of a good society is not yet socialism. So we have to start with the world as it is. And then we have to develop a strategy and tactics that take us from where we are to where we want to go. We want to go to a socialist society. There's no direct and easy path to socialism. I mean, I wish that were the case. I wish we could snap our finger and be from here to socialism in a second. But things don't work like that. You know, for socialism to become a reality in this country, it has to be embraced by tens of millions of American people. That's the only way we're going to get to socialism. That's the only way change happens. I mean, think about it. Well, let me think about some of the big changes that have taken place over the last half century. Well, in the movie we saw about the changes of the Great Depression. Out of the Depression came the New Deal. You know, labor rights, Social Security, unemployment insurance. I mean, all that took not only the communists played an instrumental role. They helped to lead the struggle. But it took many, many more, millions of American workers joining hand in hand in struggle to win Social Security, to win the New Deal. Well, let me give you another example about starting with the world as it is. Probably most of us here in this room would like to see a third political party, right?
Yes.
Anti-capitalist, you know, based among working people, people of color, women, young people, gay and straight people, immigrants, you know, that kind of party we'd like to have, be anti-capitalist. You know, fighting the corporations at every step of the way. Trouble is, millions of people in this country aren't yet ready to break for the Democratic Party. They still utilize the party in hopes of winning legislation that addresses their needs. I mean, millions went to the polls in 2008 to elect Barack Obama. And it was a historic victory. But people saw that election as a way to advance their interests. You know, they still operate within the framework of the two-party system. Now, I mean, we hope at some point they're going to see the need for a third independent political party. You know, of the different groups that I just mentioned. But they're only going to come to that conclusion, one, through our agitation. We have to agitate for it, but also through their own experience. They'll have to arrive at the conclusion that the Democratic Party isn't the vehicle that consistently fights for their interests. The world, nothing sits still. Everything is always changing. And we have to see the world, we have to see politics as a process of change. Again, it's not simply static. It's not stuck in mud, stuck in cement. Politics is always changing. People's thinking is always changing. The victory of Barack Obama. That was a historic achievement in my view. The election of the first African American. And it was a repudiation of the policies of the Bush administration that had, dominated the country for the eight previous years. But it wasn't a complete victory, because it wasn't a decisive defeat of the right wing in this country. From our point of view, the right wing extremism, that gathers mainly in the Republican Party. Right-wing extremism is the main obstacle to social progress in this country. That doesn't mean that the Democrats always fight for our interests. Obviously they don't. I'm sure we agree on that too. But the main obstacle to political progress in this country is the right-wing extremism that gathers in the Republican Party. In 2008, they were defeated, but not decisively defeated. They had still positions in the House, they still had positions in the Senate, they had important outlets in the mass media, talk radio, Fox News, and all that sort of thing. They still influence millions of people across the country, because not everybody voted for the president. Millions didn't. And over the next 2 years, now 3 years, they've been trying to obstruct everything that the White House has attempted. Again, we don't agree with everything that the Obama administration has done. For example, we would have preferred to put the banks under public democratic control. Why not? Make them a public utility. That's what we should have done. But the Obama administration has tried to do a number of different things that the right-wing Republicans have blocked, either in the House or especially the Senate. So, it wasn't a complete victory. It was contradictory results in that election. On the one hand, it was a big victory, the election of the first African-American president, but it wasn't decisive. It's not a straight line forward. We don't go from victory to victory to victory to victory until we reach, the gates of socialism. Again, we wish that were the case, but it isn't true. The struggle, it zigs and zags, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes the working class will make big advances, like in the 30s. The video we saw, it talked about the big advances that were made in the 30s for the working class in this country. Social Security, unemployment insurance, the right to organize, all those things came out of that short period of about 10 years. Then came the Cold War, the McCarthy period. They weakened the labor movement during that period. The working class movement was weakened. Now, we're beginning to see a revival of the working class movement, as was seen in Wisconsin, as was seen in Indiana, as was seen in Ohio. In each of these states, political consciousness. You know, people don't always think one thing or the other. You know, most of our heads, we got contradictory ideas. That's true of the American people. You know, on the one hand, people say, I want jobs. Well, on the other hand, they say, we've got to bring down the deficit. Well, the two things aren't compatible. Either if you bring down the deficit, you're going to have to cut back on different things, like they're doing now, like the Republicans are doing now. You know, they're cutting back on food stamps. They're cutting back on unemployment insurance. You know, they want to eliminate, at least to cut back on Social Security. So people have these contradictory ideas. They want to bring down the deficit on the one hand, but on the other hand, they want to spend money for jobs and health care and housing, which is understandable, because people need jobs, they need health care, they need housing. So you can't solve both things at the same time. So there's a contradiction there. You know, they clash. So what's our role? Our role is to convince them that we'll solve the deficit problem, but not immediately. We'll solve it further down the road. We got to convince people that the main thing now is jobs, putting people back to work, rebuilding our cities, rebuilding our infrastructure. The third tool to analyze political reality. I got here singling out class relations. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that we live in a class society. You know, there's the elite at the top of it, less than 1% who, you know, control a large share of the wealth. They make many of the decisions about the direction of our society. They control the economy. And then there's millions beneath them, you know, working people. So we look at the world not through their eyes. You know, we don't look at the world through the eyes of Bill Gates. You know, we look at it through the eyes of working people. That's how we decide what needs to be done in this country. So we bring a class point of view to everything that we come across in our society. Like war and peace, we bring a working class point of view to the struggle for peace in this country. I mean, who benefits from these wars of occupation?
Military-industrial complex?
Yeah, the military-industrial complex, the oil corporations, the wealthy. We don't benefit from them, but we know that from our class point of view. Because we look at it from the point of view of working people. Working people pay for the wars, on the one hand. On the other hand, they die in those wars. We bring a class point of view, always a working class point of view to problems. That's how we come to an understanding of what the problem is and how to change it. There's a lot of controversy on the left about the Obama administration. At least I read it. You know, people already said, you know, they said, well, we were hopeful when the president was elected, but we're losing hope quickly, and we don't know if we're even going to vote for him in 2012. But, you know, he hasn't done enough to create jobs, and he was too kind to the banks. The health care plan should have been better than what it was. So we're not sure if we're going to give him the support that he's going to want next year in 2012 during the elections. But we have to see the Obama administration in what I call a class context. You know, the president doesn't operate independently. He simply can't say, do this and do that. I want to put these people back to work. I want to rebuild this city here or that city there. I want everybody to get health care. There's opposition to that. The opposition comes from, I mentioned earlier, about the right wing that gathers in the Republican Party. You know, from the moment he was elected, they said, what we're going to do is obstruct this president at every step of the way. We're going to make his life miserable. We're going to make it hard. We're going to make it so that he can't pass any legislation at all. So there's that group. Then there's the capitalist class. They don't want any kind of major political and economic reforms passed by the Congress either. You know, in the 2008 election campaign, the president won some support from sections of Wall Street. You know, they contributed money to his campaign. But once in office, when he started to talk about financial reforms, you know, they all ran. They abandoned him. They went over to the Republican Party. They gave money hand over fist to the Republicans in the 2010 elections. So that's another group. It's a capitalist class that also opposes any kind of reform measures by the Obama administration. Then in his own party, the Democratic Party, that's a mixed bag. I mean, there are Democrats who fight for people's rights. You have some here in Los Angeles, in Southern California. There are others around the country. They more or less identify with the people's movement. You know, they fight for jobs, they fight for health care. They fight against war. They want to end the occupation of Afghanistan. But there are others in the Democratic Party who are, you know, in the pocketbook of big business. You know, they say, oh, okay, but we'll make some changes in terms of health care, jobs, and so on, but let's not go too far. Let's not get carried away. So there's that group too. A section of the Democratic Party opposes any changes that the administration might want to make. Then there are people in his own cabinet. You know, not everybody who's in the cabinet in the White House is of the same mind. Not everybody thinks alike. Some have, you know, they have different points of view. They conflict. They give the president conflicting advice. Now, that's not, again, it's not to excuse some of the weaknesses and shortcomings of this administration. But what I'm trying to put across is the idea that there's a whole complex of class and social forces that are weighing against change in Washington and in the country. They don't want change. They're trying to prevent change. So we have to take that into account when we evaluate what the administration has done right and what it does wrong, especially. As an example, I got the two parties of capitalism. Now, we'll probably agree that the Democratic and Republican parties are, you know, parties that in the end will defend the system of capitalism. Do we agree with that? Yeah. So that's what I call a broad generalization. We look at things a little more closely, a little more concretely. We'll find that there are differences between the two parties in terms of policy and in terms of the social composition of the two parties. I mean, the Republican Party largely is a party of the top layers of big business, small business, the more conservative elements in this country. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, I happened to go to the convention in 2008 in Denver. And at that convention were assembled the very people that will have to make change in this country if we want any kind of major change. You had the labor movement there. You had the African American people there. You had the Mexican American people there. You had women there. You had gay and straight people there. You had peace activists there. You had other social activists there. They're not in love with the Democratic Party, but they're trying to utilize that party in order to push across their program, fight for their interests. So there's a difference in the composition of the two parties that we have to take into account. Because like it or not, we have to win the people operating within the Democratic Party to our side with the whole notion of radical change in this country if we're going to get anywhere. Then the other difference is the difference in policy. They're both parties of capitalism, but that does not mean that they have identical political positions on all different issues. On health care, there's a difference. You know, the Republicans like to privatize health care. Or education. Republicans would like to privatize it. On jobs, the Republicans say we don't need to increase jobs. In fact, they're saying we don't have to increase unemployment benefits, despite the fact that there are close to 50 million people either unemployed or underemployed in the country. I mean, imagine. They're saying no increase in benefits. In fact, what they're saying in some states is we're going to cut back on those benefits, because the problem is that there are jobs. The problem is lazy workers. People won't look for work. So there are differences in policy on different issues. On some issues they have identical positions, but on many, many different issues there are differences in policy. Let me give you an example. The Supreme Court. The nominees of President Obama were not nominations that, say, a George Bush would have. And the Supreme Court has a big impact upon life in this country. It makes a lot of decisions that have a big bearing on people's day-to-day lives. So Obama nominated 2 women to the court, one a Puerto Rican woman. Bush would not his wildest imagination, wildest dream would have done that. So there are differences. Now, as an example, I got here Cuban socialism. I don't know if you heard, but the Cubans just had a Congress. The Cuban Party had a Congress. At this Congress, they make all kinds of decisions about the future of the country, the economy, the whole 9 yards. Now, at this Congress, Raul Castro, who was the new general secretary of the party, said that we're going to lay off. Actually, they had said this before, but he reaffirmed it at the Congress. They're going to lay off close to how many?
500,000.
500,000 workers.
Eventually 1 million.
And they're going to open up space for private enterprise. Now, some people might say, are they giving up socialism? Is this a retreat from socialism? Well, my opinion is no, it isn't. Actually, these steps will strengthen socialism in Cuba, even though it appears differently. The essence of it is that the steps he's taken, steps he proposed at this Congress, will have the effect of perfecting socialism, not weakening it. So again, we have to look beyond what appears on the surface. We have to try to get beneath the surface of things in order to understand what's going on. It's easy to look at things and say, oh my God, nothing's changing. It's the same old. But usually that's not the case. Usually something new is developing, because there's always this process of change taking place. So we have to look for things that are developed, just small shoots sometimes. Because it's not like they're in full bloom, but small shoots of struggle that do emerge in day-to-day life. Like, well, I don't know if it's a small shoot, but Wisconsin. I mean, that emerged, and that's new. It represents something new. It's a break from the old ways that the labor movement has functioned. So, because a lot of people get cynical, don't they? They say, nothing's ever going to change. You know, that's all how it was in the past, that's how it is now, that's how it is going to be in the future. But we're optimists. You know, we look for these little shoots of struggle, and we jump in there too, we try to develop them further. You know, say there's a strike struggle that breaks out. Well, we want to give that strike solidarity support. You know, raise money for it. Bring food to the picket lines, bring coffee to the picket lines, get resolutions passed in our university or school, high school, whatever. You know, not everything is of equal importance. Sometimes some changes will bring about, they'll have big consequences on people's lives. Like we saw in the video earlier, and I think they had footage there from the sit-down strike in Flint, Michigan. And that was led by communists. They were in the leadership of that. Again, joined by other GM workers. But that strike had not only an impact upon the ability of those workers to negotiate a contract, but it had an impact upon the possibilities of workers throughout industry to negotiate. It kind of broke the dam, and a whole flood of struggles developed from that. Or the 2012 elections, that can be, I think, a key link in the chain of struggle. If, I don't know who might run for president, there are a whole list of possible Republican candidates now. But just say, for example, say Sarah Palin. Michelle is the presidential candidate, and
Bachman is the vice.
Bachman or Newt Gingrich is the vice presidential candidate. And say the Republicans win back the White House, and they also regain a majority in the Congress, in the Senate, and the House. Well, we're going to have hell to pay for the next 4 years at least. No question about that. Because they not only want to cut back here and there, but they want to roll back all the gains that have been won since the 1930s. They want to dismantle government. They want to crush the labor and people's movements. I mean, that's what they're trying to do up in Wisconsin. The governor there wanted to crush the trade union movement. Same thing in Indiana, wanted to crush the labor movement. In Ohio, Kasich wants to crush the labor movement. So they not only want to, take back, they want to roll back to the 30s. Elections in 2012 is a key link in the chain of struggle. If we have an outcome where the president wins a landslide, and the Democrats win majorities in the House and the Congress, again, we don't have illusions about the Democratic Party, but that will position us. That'll give us some political space to fight for what we need. We'll have a better chance of fighting for jobs, for example, if that's the outcome. I mean, if the outcome is a Palin and a Michelle Bachmann or Newt Gingrich in a Republican-dominated Congress, we can forget about the job struggle. Probably forget about, they'll probably roll back the modest health care bill that was passed, 2 years ago now. So the 2012 elections, there is a key link in the chain of struggle. Again, it positions us to fight. It doesn't guarantee anything if there's a good outcome. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it does position us to fight. And see, that's the important thing. Doesn't guarantee, doesn't mean we're going to have jobs tomorrow, we're going to have single pay the next day, but it will position us. We'll have more leverage. You know, politics is a lot about leverage, having political openings. And there'll be some political openings, we'll have some leverage to win what we need. Finally, that is finally. Let me just talk about some dangers that we all have in analyzing political reality. One, I talked about this earlier, is wishful thinking. And that's always a danger. You know, we wish this, we wish that, but the question is, are we in a situation where these things can be won? Like again, I'll mention the example of socialism. We all wish it were here tomorrow, probably, or today, later on tonight. But we don't have the effective forces yet who are ready to fight for it. You know, politics is all about assembling, you know, a broad movement. You know, the social forces, like the working class, people of color, immigrants, women, young people, seniors, gay and straight people, the whole 9 yards. You have to assemble them all in order to make big changes in this country. So, again, we have to be careful about, trying to wish a world into being. You can't do that. You have to build a movement. You have to organize a movement in order to do that. Or another problem is exaggerating changes. Because, you know, changes take place, and sometimes there's this tendency to, like to take Wisconsin. That was a major change, but it wasn't a social revolution either. So we have to be careful about not exaggerating things. On the other hand, we have to be careful about not underestimating the significance of things that do take place. Finally, you know, we need a lot of militancy and a lot of enthusiasm. We need spirit. But we're also going to need an attitude of, we're going to have a long, persistent struggle to get from here to socialism. There's no other way to do it.